because he was only 344, and Nigel there just taking a sip before the madness starts. Kasparov hovering over the board, looking for some kind of continuation. I would almost guarantee once he plays a move, it's going to be blitz.
It's going to be
They're both
blitz.
just going to go crazy. So
well, we're going to see how well they adapt into time pressure. And we have to remember, blitz is a totally different game than time pressure. Yes, it's the same amount of time, but the way you've been thinking about the position for the last, what, 40, 50 minutes, it's completely different. Then you have to suddenly play blitz? No, it's not the same. And we see a lot of players fail in time pressure, even though they're good blitz players, because it's a different ballgame.
Kasparov now under 3 minutes. It's 2:54. We saw him oblivious to the clock yesterday, looking at the clock, and finally he brought his bishop back. He brought his bishop back, realizing he needed to make a move. This seems to potentially hang the b6 pawn, but that's a dangerous pawn to take at the moment, at least, because knight f3 check might be playable.
You need nerves of steel to play something like queen takes b6. But then again, to beat Kasparov, well, you need them. You could take on b6. I don't see any immediate refutation. After knight f3 check, I have to play king f1.
Well, let's take a look at this analysis, because this crazy knight, if this doesn't work, then Kasparov's just in trouble. Queen takes on b6. Queen takes b6, knight f3 check, king f1.
Now, you could keep checking me, but I don't really think that you're going to make too much progress after knight f3 check again. Even here, I can go king d1. And it just seems like...
Is bishop f5 ever going to be in the mix
He
here?
has to play bishop f5 at some point. He might as well do it from the beginning, with the idea of maybe bishop e4 also to trade off that bishop. This bishop on g2 is holding the position together. That bishop disappears and white position collapses.
Also, bishop d3 could come in the mix at some point as well.
At some point. I'm also attacking that rook on c2, so it's definitely still very dangerous here.
A critical decision for Short, what to do, and he's played f4. Finally, this aggressive move,
fire
f4
with fire
on the board.
Amazing.
F4, and Kasparov really has no time to think about it. This is not something you can calculate. You've got to make a move. F4. We do have a 10-second delay in this game, so if you don't see the time start immediately, it's because of that 10-second delay. But f4, attacking the knight, is on the board. Knight f3 is not in play right now. Short being very aggressive, 231, left for Kasparov and ticking down very quickly. He needs to make a decision, but white's pieces look completely harmonized. I mean, it doesn't look like black could possibly have anything here.
But I'm a little confused, because do you have any other move than knight h3?
And he's played knight h3
He needed
check.
to play that immediately, because it was his only move.
That's incredible. Well, he could have played knight h7, which looks
but that's
disgusting.
Disgusting. You don't play that.
But now what does he do? He can't take an f4 because the rook on h8 is hanging. That bishop on the b2 square is hitting the rook, so he can't do that. So what can he do here as black? I mean,
well, he could try bishop f5, maybe bringing the bishop into the game. He can think about sacrifices on f4, but I don't see them working at the moment.
Let's take a look at this.
Bishop f5 looks to me like that.
And he's played solidly. He's played f6.
Oh, interesting.
F6, keeping lines closed, keeping lines closed for the moment.
It's not so good for a white to go like this, as rook would eventually come to f8, say thank you for the free open file, and yeah, this looks very dangerous. I don't think we're going to see an f takes e5 unless it really wins something for white. On the other hand, maybe I can play a little bit slower, play something like queen f3.
Queen f3 looks very attractive right now.
Right.
Defending everything.
You want to trade off those pieces.
This looks like a great move for white, but he has not played it as yet. His time is ticking again. He's calculating, worried maybe about some line, but it just looks like queen f3 is a very natural response.
It's natural, and on the other hand, I mean, can he take on b6 and say...
Well, if he takes on b6, he has to deal also with queen takes on g3, and what happens there? I mean, unless he has something concrete, he does look like he may be able to play queen c6 check. Let's try that line. Queen c6. Well, is there any mate I have to worry about on this side?
I don't quite see any immediate threats. I was trying to...
And he has played queen f3. He said, no, forget it.
Queen f3 makes
forget
a
it.
lot more sense.
Slow it down.
Queen f3.
And queen f3, but not with much of an advantage on the clock. Now looking for an ending that potentially could be advantageous, but at the same time, this doesn't look terrible for black. The bottom line, though, is that they're going to be blitzing, and they're going to have to play very quickly.
Well, the endgames do seem pretty bad. It's not so much that you're down the exchange. I'm a little worried about the knight on h3. I don't see how you can get it back into the game. If Kasparov finds a good way to do so, he might go for the endgame. But if he doesn't, the knight on h3 might just be stuck for the rest of the game, and then, okay, you cannot really play like this.
So he has avoided it with the move queen to f5. Queen to f5 on the board, and now potentially taking on f4 with a pawn has become a threat in the position. It's hard to believe he could just open the file that way, but it does seem as though it is possible to take on f4 with a pawn.
Right, and it is very important that after pawn takes e5, pawn takes e5, this is a completely different endgame because the knight can now go back to g5, rejoin the rest of the pieces, and therefore here black's not doing so badly.
Complex play by both these players. They only have a minute and 40 seconds to go on the clock. This could still, if you just add another 30 minutes, they could still be playing, but they do not have the luxury of the time on their side, and somehow Short is going to have to make a move. He is down to 122 and counting on the clock, and he has played the move rook to e4, rook to e4.
He defends that pawn on f4. You were just mentioning how that might be a possibility. It prevents it in two ways. First, because the pawn is actually defended, but also, barely more importantly, it allows him to double up on the e file in certain variations where this opens up. So rook e4, a little relatively multi-purpose move.
Indeed, and also getting the rook away from any bishop that might land on g4 in the future. Right. So
I am worried a little bit about some bishop skewers on the f5 position, but at the moment, okay, there's a queen there. I can't quite do it.
Well, king f7 has been played.
King f7, just safeguarding his king, making a move, passing, saying, okay, you played rook e4, you solidified your position, but I can do the same.
Show me the money right now, and down to 126. These guys haven't really caught the memo yet. Listen to this, man. Look at this. 120 and counting.
The move bishop c1.
The thing is, it's not just needing to play. It's needing to get into blitz mode. And now he's under a minute.
Exactly.
57 seconds. This is outrageous. And he's just looked at the clock and realized his situation is perilous. He needs to make a move. 49 seconds left and counting. And he's still calculating variations. Not sure what to do.
Okay, play. Come on.
Make a move. He's looked at the clock yet again, and his hand on the chin is not the pose you want right now. And he's played the other rook over to e2, and Kasparov knows he has a significant edge on the clock. Queen
That's
to
what you
G4.
need to be doing. You need to play quickly. Absolutely.
Queen to g4 has been played. That does allow the endgame after takes.
The difference is that here the e2 rook would be hanging at some point.
Well, not if he takes. If he takes, he attacks the queen. Takes on e5. Rook is attacking queen. That forces a trade, right? Although the knight g4, g5
right,
might
but
happen.
This is the endgame that I wanted.
And here it is. This has happened. Takes,
right.
Takes, and this idea of knight. No, he's not going to let.
I don't think you can allow e6 check. That
E6
would just
check
be
would be very strong.
So you need to take first. I think he's thinking about which one, because taking with the other pawn is actually not such a bad idea, giving some breathing room to the bishop.
And he has given white a pass pawn, but his bishop is in the game. And now rook to h4, looking to trade off rooks. A big moment, but that has allowed a knight to ensconce itself on f4. The knight coming back in this position looks
crazy. It's still very hard to evaluate.
This is a crazy position, and Nigel with only 27 seconds and counting down. He's not going to get any increment here. No added time, just a delay.
But from a practical point of view, this is so much easier to play for black. So much easier. You have this pass pawns in the center. You have some weaknesses to attack. You have a4 is weak, c4 is weak, and the powerful knight on f4. The knight is always such a nice asset in blitz.
And now look at this, bishop to c5, and Kasparov knows he has a super solid position. The d-pawn is not going anywhere anytime soon, and most importantly, that bishop on b2 has no potential. I mean, just none. Best they could do, it looks like it's traded itself off with the knight on f4, and that's irrelevant right now because he's got 11 seconds left. He's just got to make a move, and he's played d6.
Basically sacrificing this pawn.
Look at how Kasparov just kind of adjusted the pawn on d6, like he's had the time to do that on his own time, as a matter of fact. And now bishop h3 check, the king has to move.
The king has to go to e1.
And now bishop to b4, winning back the exchange. That's not good news for white, absolutely. Now moving his king, and Kasparov even hesitating to take this rook.
But why not? D2. Why not take it? He's going to do it. I don't see why not. It's the exchange being recovered. The pawn on d6 still weak. Not a walk in the park to win yet.
And he has ignored taking and played bishop back to d7, ripping off that pawn on a4. Now he's got a pass pawn on the a file. That was a very surprising decision, but he feels like, oh, and he's taking a pawn on d6 as well.
Now he's up material.
Now he's just up. Now he's winning on the board, winning on the clock. He's a minute advantage almost on the clock, and now he can stop and play f5, coming on strong, and now the move e4, attacking is Garry Kasparov in his element.
No, there's just too much play here. The material is not enough for short. Pawns are coming. This is really easy for
And now
black.
a knight on d3, just posting
rook on
deep in
h2
the
under
position.
attack.
Look at that bishop on h1. Ridiculous piece.
That's not the bishop you want.
This is all Gary. This looked like the exchange sack, which you should have gotten out of the exchange sack. And now bishop on d1 coming in on the other side, and now bringing the
Nice
bishop
little
back
maneuver.
to
The pawn on
b3.
c4 hanging.
Now-
There's knight c1 is a threat.
And an exchange sacrifice in order to mess up the game just a little bit, but he's down
looks like a desperado.
3 pawns.
Just a desperado.
Count them, 3 pawns with only 18 seconds on his clock. This is just technique now, and Nigel just moving quickly, king to b2, and now a4, and now the other
Resigns.
pawn. This
This
is
is
definitely a
resigns.
resignable position, but he's going to play. He's going to let Kasparov show that he can just win this game. The pawn on d3 is hanging, so b5.
b5,
What
what?
pawn on d3 he's saying? What-
Any simplification here would be an easy win. If, for example, king takes d3, bishop takes c4 check. Very obvious win here with the 2 extra pawns.
Absolutely. It's still making moves, is short. He has been stuck on 18
F4.
seconds for quite some time, but now f4.
Follow up with king f5, king g4.